Avery was always forced to stay in the back during family photos, told she wasn't photo-worthy because she didn't fit their idea of beauty. Even her own aunt would remind her she was invisible. But years later, when she walked the red carpet in a stunning dress with the names of those who put her down embroidered on the train, the cameras flashed. As she turned, she looked straight into the lens and said, "You thought I wasn't worth your attention. But look at me now." Avery Collins was 9 years old the first time she realized she was invisible. Not in the superhero sense, not in the kind that could walk through walls or disappear at will. No, her invisibility was a deliberate act enforced by the people who were supposed to love her most, her own family. It was her cousin Clara's birthday that year, and the entire extended family had gathered for a professional photo shoot in front of their grandmother's sprawling country estate in Vermont. The air was crisp, the grass perfectly trimmed, and everyone was dressed in color-coordinated pastels like they were filming a commercial for perfection. Avery, with her tangled brown curls, oversized glasses, and second-hand dress that hung awkwardly on her small frame, stood awkwardly at the edge of the group. "Avery, why do you always insist on being in the front?" her Aunt Margaret snapped, adjusting the position of her daughter, Lily, who was only a year older but already carried herself with the effortless poise of someone groomed to be admired. Avery blinked in confusion. "I just wanted to stand with everyone." Her aunt scoffed. "Only the pretty ones belong up front. We do not want to ruin the photos. Go to the back." The photographer, who clearly sensed the hierarchy within the family, said nothing. He simply gestured slightly with his camera, reinforcing the silent command. So Avery did what she always did. She obeyed. She stood behind everyone, barely visible, and smiled even though she wanted to cry. That day was not an anomaly. It was the pattern of Avery's life. At school, she was quiet, introverted, and often overlooked. Her mother, Dana, had passed away when Avery was 5, and since then, her father had become a ghost of himself, working long hours, barely speaking, lost in his grief. Avery was raised mostly by her father's sister, Margaret, who made it abundantly clear that she considered Avery a burden rather than family. Margaret's 2 daughters, Clara and Lily, were everything Avery was not: blonde, slim, charismatic, and adored. They were the stars of every family event, every school performance, and every social media post. Avery, on the other hand, was the blurry figure in the background or, more often, cropped out entirely. By the time she turned 14, Avery had learned to shrink herself so well that even silence became her shield. When she was not in school, she was cleaning, running errands, or doing Clara and Lily's homework for them, anything to avoid conflict. She found solace in one place: books. She devoured novels like a starving child, living in worlds where girls like her triumphed. Her favorite stories were always about transformation, about someone unwanted becoming extraordinary. It was during one of those long nights, sitting alone in the attic with a flashlight and a tattered copy of Jane Eyre, that she whispered to herself for the first time, "One day, they will see me. Not just see me, but remember me." That seed of quiet defiance grew slowly but fiercely. In high school, she began to teach herself how to sew. It started with repairing her own clothes because Aunt Margaret would not buy her anything new. But soon, she was creating entire outfits from scraps. She watched YouTube tutorials, borrowed books from the library, and studied fashion design like her life depended on it. Her designs were not just beautiful, they were bold. They told stories, much like the novels she had once escaped into. Her pieces carried emotion, anger, longing, and resilience stitched into every seam. But still, she kept her talent hidden, afraid of ridicule. Until one day, her teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, noticed the dress she had made from an old curtain. The woman was stunned. She called it raw genius and submitted photos of it to a statewide student design competition without telling Avery. 2 months later, Avery was holding a trophy in her hands. It was the first time her name had been announced with applause instead of sighs or sarcasm. That night, she cried herself to sleep, not from sadness, but from the strange foreign feeling of being seen. But the recognition did not change things at home. Aunt Margaret barely mentioned the award, and her cousins continued to mock her passion for homeless fashion, as Clara called it. Yet something had shifted in Avery. For the first time, she had proof that she was capable of more. By the time she graduated high school, she had secretly applied to every fashion program she could find. When the acceptance letter from Parsons School of Design arrived, she stared at it for a full hour before telling anyone. Her father barely reacted. Aunt Margaret was livid. "You are not serious. New York? What makes you think you belong there?" Avery met her aunt's glare with a new steadiness. "Because they think I do. And I believe them." She packed what little she had, took the small amount of savings from her part-time job at the local diner, and left for New York with a suitcase full of fabric scraps and a heart full of fire. The city was brutal, unforgiving, but it was the first place Avery felt alive. She worked nights as a hostess to pay her rent, spent her days at school, and used every spare moment to create. Her designs became her voice, her rebellion, her truth. She faced rejection after rejection, but with each failure came refinement. Her work evolved, becoming sharper, bolder, undeniable. And then came the moment that would change everything. She submitted a capsule collection to an emerging designer showcase. Out of over 300 applicants, she was chosen as one of the final 10. Her runway slot was at 3 p.m. on a Saturday during Fashion Week. It felt unreal. This was the stage where legends were born. But Avery had something else in mind, something personal, something unforgettable. In the weeks leading up to the showcase, Avery barely slept. Her fingers were raw from stitching, her shoulders ached from long nights hunched over the sewing machine, but she did not stop. The collection she was preparing was not just fashion, it was a reckoning. Every stitch, every fold, every line on every piece told the story of a girl who had once been invisible. But there was one dress, one final piece that she saved for last. It was not meant for the runway. She began work on it in silence one night after a particularly vivid dream of her younger self standing alone in the back row of that cursed family photo. The memory returned with such clarity that she could still hear Aunt Margaret's voice in her head. "Only the pretty ones belong up front." Avery took a long piece of black satin, as dark as the years she had spent being ignored. On its train, she began to embroider names, one by one. Margaret, Clara, Lily. All the names of those who had tried to dim her light. Their names trailed down the back of the gown like a shadow, but the thread she used was golden. It shimmered against the black like a warning, like a scar that turned beautiful. Days before the showcase, a photographer visited their studio to capture behind-the-scenes footage. He noticed the unfinished dress hanging in the corner. "What is that one?" he asked. Avery replied without looking up. "That one is personal." He raised an eyebrow. "You should show it. It feels like it has a story." She paused, then shook her head. "It is not ready." What she did not tell him was that she had no intention of showing the dress on the runway. That dress was meant for something else, a statement. The day of the showcase arrived. Backstage was a frenzy of makeup artists, models, stylists, and assistants yelling over each other in controlled chaos. Avery stood in the middle of it all, still, calm, focused. Her collection was unlike anything the others had brought. While the others followed trends, hers told a narrative. Her models wore garments that looked like poetry in motion, structured yet delicate, powerful yet mournful. The show began. One by one, her pieces walked the runway, drawing gasps from the audience. Influencers whispered to each other. Journalists scribbled notes. A woman from Vogue leaned forward, eyes narrowed, intrigued. But it was the final moment that would be remembered forever. As the last model exited the runway, the lights dimmed. There was a moment of silence before a single spotlight snapped on. And then, Avery walked out herself. In the dress, the black gown with the names glimmering down the train. The crowd froze. She stood still for a beat. Then she slowly turned. Cameras exploded in a frenzy of flashes. She could hear gasps. "Are those names?" someone murmured. "Is that her family?" As she reached the edge of the runway, she looked directly into the crowd and said, clear and calm, "For every time I was told I did not belong, thank you. You gave me fire." The room erupted. What Avery had not known was that the moment would go viral before she even stepped backstage. Within an hour, the clip had been posted by 5 major fashion pages on Instagram. By midnight, her name was trending on Twitter. By morning, she was receiving interview requests from major outlets. But while the fashion world praised her bravery and authenticity, there was another corner of her life stirring with chaos. Her family. They had seen it. Clara sent a message first. What the hell was that? You embarrassed us in front of the whole world." Avery stared at the message for a long time before responding. "You told me I was not photo-worthy. You made me invisible. You are lucky I did not use your actual words." The next day, Aunt Margaret called. Avery let it go to voicemail. "You may be on some magazine page now," her voice hissed through the speaker. "But do not forget where you came from." Avery laughed bitterly. She would never forget. That was the point. 2 weeks later, she received a package in the mail. No note, no return address. Inside was a worn photo, one from Clara's 9th birthday party. The same family photo where Avery had been pushed to the back. Someone had circled her in red ink. Underneath the circle, one word was scrawled in thick black marker: regret. She held the photo in her hands for a long moment, trying to decipher whether it was an insult or a surrender. But it did not matter. That little girl in the background no longer needed their validation. Avery's life changed rapidly after that. She signed with an agency, collaborated with a major designer in Paris, and was asked to create a piece for a global campaign focused on women who had overcome adversity. But there was one moment that truly marked her transformation. She was invited to attend a film premiere in Los Angeles, a red carpet event. Her name was on the guest list beside celebrities and fashion elites. Instead of choosing a gown from a stylist's rack, she decided to wear her own creation. And once again, she pulled out the black dress with the golden embroidery. She updated it slightly, tailored the bodice, added a subtle shimmer to the sleeves, and stitched one final phrase near the hemline. "You saw me too late." The night of the premiere arrived like a dream wrapped in velvet. The red carpet outside the theater pulsed with the energy of Hollywood. Paparazzi shouted names, camera shutters flickered like lightning, and reporters held out microphones hoping for a quote that would trend by morning. But no one expected the moment that would unfold when Avery stepped out of her car. The crowd hushed, the cameras turned, and then the flashes began again, faster than ever. She wore the dress. The black satin flowed around her like smoke, and the golden embroidery shimmered like firelight. Her posture was regal, her face calm, but her eyes burned. As she walked the carpet, a journalist asked who the names belonged to. Avery smiled politely and replied, "They are the reason I am standing here today." No one asked anything further. The photos went viral that night. Hashtags like Dom the Invisible Girl, returns, and golden names on black silk flooded social media. People began asking questions, speculating. Who were these names? What was their story? And soon, internet detectives connected the dots. Someone unearthed an old Facebook post from Clara's page, a birthday photo. The same one. Avery in the background, half-shadowed. It was unmistakable. The caption read, "Family is everything, except when they do not belong in front." That post began circulating again. This time, the comments were brutal. People from around the world flooded Clara's profile with words she had never expected. The balance had shifted. The invisible girl was now the symbol of millions who had felt pushed aside, belittled, and dismissed. But while the world praised Avery, inside her own chest, old wounds pulsed. She had not spoken to her mother in years. After the final fight, when her mother had told her to stop acting like she deserved special treatment, Avery had packed her bags and left. There had been no messages since, not even after her first magazine feature, not even after her first award. But now, as she prepared to attend an after-party filled with powerful people, her phone buzzed. It was a voicemail. Her mother's voice was shaking. "I saw the photos, Avery. I did not know it had hurt you so deeply. I thought I was protecting you by telling you to stay quiet, to stay out of the way. I did not want you to get hurt more. I thought blending in would keep you safe." Avery sat in the back of the car, frozen. There it was, what she had longed to hear, and yet it still felt too little, too late. But the night was not done with surprises. At the after-party, held in a rooftop lounge glittering with chandeliers and designer gowns, Avery mingled among directors and models. She was smiling for a camera when she noticed a familiar figure across the room. Clara. She looked out of place, nervous, clumsy in a borrowed dress, clearly not invited. She held a phone in her hand like a weapon, eyes scanning the room. Avery excused herself and walked straight toward her. Clara's expression flickered between fear and defiance. "What are you doing here?" Avery asked, her voice low and calm. "I came to talk," Clara replied quickly. "Everyone is attacking me. My business lost 3 clients. Do you know what you have done to us?" Avery's face remained still. "Do you know what you did to me?" Clara scoffed, but her voice shook. "It was not that serious. You are acting like we destroyed your life." Avery leaned in, close enough that only Clara could hear. "You destroyed my self-worth. You made me afraid to be seen. You trained me to believe that I had no beauty, no value. And you said it so many times that I believed it." Clara looked like she wanted to cry. "I was just a kid." "And I was a kid too," Avery replied, stepping back. "But now I am not, and I choose to be seen." The next day, a photo surfaced from the after-party. Avery in that black and gold gown, standing across from Clara. 1,000 captions speculated about what was said. None of them got it right, but the image went viral again, cementing Avery's story in the public's imagination. More opportunities followed. Avery was offered a keynote speech at a global fashion summit in Berlin. She stood on a stage in front of thousands, speaking about transformation, identity, and how silence was never protection. It was punishment. But then a letter arrived that shook her more than any of the social media storms. It was handwritten, from her Aunt Margaret. "You always were dramatic, but I suppose you made something of it. Your little moment will fade eventually. Just remember where you came from." There was no apology, no ownership, just spite. Avery held the letter in her hands, anger rising again like a storm. But instead of burning it, she framed it, hung it in her studio, as a reminder of how far she had come and how far she would still go. Avery was flying high. International campaigns, editorial covers, and even whispers about her potential debut as a creative director at a top fashion house. Her face, once hidden behind others in family photos, was now plastered across billboards in New York and Milan. But one morning, as she was finalizing sketches for an upcoming charity showcase, she received a call that felt like ice on her spine. It was from a hospital in her hometown. Her mother had suffered a stroke. The words echoed in her mind, hitting places she thought had been sealed shut. She stared at the hospital voicemail in disbelief. Her first instinct was to ignore it. After all, the woman who raised her had raised her with silence, shame, and sharp looks. But the ache in her chest refused to let go. Against every fiber of her pride, she boarded a flight home. The town had not changed. The cracked sidewalks, the peeling paint on old houses, the same supermarket that once had refused to hang her flyer for a school art show because her work was not as good as Clara's. Everything looked exactly as broken and familiar as she remembered. The hospital room was quiet when she walked in. Her mother lay still, pale and unfamiliar. The woman who once towered over her, whose cold words had shaped Avery's childhood, now looked small and defeated. A nurse approached gently. "She is conscious, but weak. She has been asking for you." Avery sat beside her. Her mother's eyes opened slowly. There was a flicker of recognition, then tears. "I am sorry," she whispered. "Not just for the photos, for everything. I was jealous of your heart, your strength. I never had it." The confession hit Avery like a punch. She did not respond. She could not. Her mother continued, voice breaking. "You remind me of your father. He left because of me, because I told him he would never love you enough to fix you." Avery's breath caught. "What do you mean?" The room was silent for a long moment before her mother spoke again. "Your father did not leave because of work. He left because I made him choose between you and a clean break." Avery staggered to her feet. "You told him to leave me? I told him that if he truly loved you, he should stay away, that you needed to toughen up, that he was spoiling you." Avery turned away. Everything she had believed, that her father had vanished out of indifference, had been a lie. Her mother had pushed him away from her. And worse, she had done it as a calculated move. She left the hospital room in a haze, walking through the hallways like a ghost. But the ghosts were not done with her yet. Outside the hospital, a car pulled up. A man stepped out. Salt and pepper hair, familiar eyes, and a suit worn with the elegance of someone who had built a second life elsewhere. He spoke her name softly. "Avery." She froze. I've waited so long to see you again." She stared at him, lips trembling. "Dad?" He nodded. "I came as soon as I heard. She told me. Finally." They sat on a bench under a dying oak tree and spoke for the first time in 20 years. He told her about the letters he wrote but never sent, the birthdays he never attended because he was told it would confuse her, the visits he made to her school, where he watched her from a distance, too afraid to be seen. It was a reunion painted in sadness, but also in soft light, like the glow of dawn after a sleepless night. He handed her a worn envelope. Inside was a photo of her, one she had never seen. She was 5 years old on a swing, laughing. "I took this the day before I left. I have kept it in my wallet since." Her hand shook as she held the photo. The little girl inside it had been forgotten by the world, but not by him. That night, Avery checked into a quiet hotel on the edge of town. She needed space to breathe, to think. But when she returned to her room after a short walk, she found the door slightly ajar. She stepped in carefully. Nothing seemed stolen, but something had definitely been moved. On the bed lay a single envelope, no name, just a symbol she recognized, her Aunt Margaret's old wax seal. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was a faded photograph, clearly taken decades ago. It showed her mother, pregnant, standing beside Margaret, but something was off. On the back was scrawled handwriting. "Only one of them belongs to you." Her heart thundered. What was this supposed to mean? She stared at the photo again. Then it hit her. Her mother had not just raised her with cruelty. She might have been hiding something far darker. She called her father in a panic. He answered immediately. "I need to ask you something," she said. Am I really your daughter?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "I always thought you were." "What does that mean?" "I mean, when you were born, there were whispers, family drama, but I chose to love you. I chose to believe you were mine." The world shifted beneath Avery's feet. If she was not his, then whose was she? And why had no one told her? Her entire identity, everything she thought she had reclaimed, was now shrouded in new uncertainty. That night, Avery barely slept. The envelope haunted her, as did her father's hesitant voice. The photo, the words on the back, the strange seal. It all pointed in one direction: Margaret. Her aunt had always been the most vocal critic in the family, the one who made cruel jokes in front of guests, the one who moved Avery to the back row during family photos without even pretending it was for any other reason than looks. She used to laugh and say things like, "The camera might crack if Avery's in front." Avery always believed it was about spite or jealousy, but now she suspected something else entirely. She drove to Margaret's home the next morning. It had not changed in years. Same blue shutters, same patchy lawn. Her aunt opened the door slowly, frowning at the sight of her. "You look like her more and more," Margaret muttered. "Who?" Avery asked, pushing her way inside without waiting. Margaret shut the door. "Your mother, of course." Avery pulled out the photo and slapped it onto the dining table. "What does this mean? Who does 'only one of them belongs to you' refer to?" Margaret stared at it for a moment too long. "You should leave this alone," she said finally. "I am not leaving until I get answers." Her aunt sat down, suddenly older than her years. "Fine. You want the truth? I will give it to you. But it is going to hurt." Avery's pulse pounded in her ears. "Your mother got pregnant at 19, but not by the man she married. That man, your father, was told you were his because it was easier that way. He wanted to believe it, and she let him." Avery's lips parted in disbelief. "Then who?" Margaret's eyes were sharp now. "Someone she met at a summer internship, a photographer. He was engaged. When she told him she was pregnant, he disappeared, left the country. And you just let me grow up not knowing? You were never supposed to find out." Avery stood in silence, the weight of it settling over her like lead. But Margaret was not done. "You think I hated you for your looks? Number, I hated you because every time I saw you, I saw how she got away with everything. While I stayed in this miserable town, cleaning up her messes. You were not punished for being ugly, Avery. You were punished for being a reminder." The admission crushed something deep inside her. She left without another word. That afternoon, she drove out to the town records office. There was no time to dwell on pain. She needed truth. The clerk, an older woman named Joanne, helped her dig through birth certificates, medical records, and hospital logs from over 2 decades ago. There it was, a notation next to her birth record: paternal information not verified. That night, Avery stared at the copy of the certificate. There was no father's name, but Joanne had given her something else, a partial name found in an old prenatal registration form. The name was smudged, but one thing was clear: the last name, Callahan. She remembered it suddenly. Her mother once referred to a man named Ethan Callahan during a fight with Margaret. She had dismissed it as nothing. Avery turned to Google, her fingers shaking. She searched the name. Ethan Callahan, photographer, retired, now running a gallery in Los Angeles. She booked a flight that night. 2 days later, she walked into a small coastal gallery lined with black and white portraits. A man stood behind the counter, tall, thin, his silver hair pulled back. "Can I help you?" he asked. She held up the photo of her mother pregnant. He froze. "I think you knew her," Avery said. He stared at the image, then at her. "My God," he whispered, "you look just like her." The truth was written on his face before he even spoke again. "I tried to reach out once," he said, "but she made it very clear I would never be part of your life. I was a coward. I let her convince me it was for the best." Avery did not cry. She just listened. When she left the gallery, she had a name, a face, a truth, and another secret. Ethan Callahan had no other children, no spouse, no legacy, just a gallery and a will. And he had asked her to come back the next day. He wanted to talk about setting things right. The timing was cruel, because just as one man offered her a place in his life, another was about to exit hers. Her phone rang. It was her father, the man who raised her. "I am at the hospital again," he said softly. "They think she is fading." Avery flew back that night, caught in a whirlwind of emotion. She arrived just in time to hold her mother's hand one final time. There were no grand apologies, no final explanations, just a whisper. "I always knew you would rise." The funeral was modest, the family distant. No one seemed to acknowledge what had changed, except Avery. She wore a simple black dress, but on her wrist was a bracelet. Not just any bracelet, the same one her mother once took from her when she was 12, saying, "Pretty things do not suit plain girls." Avery wore it now because it belonged to her, and because she was done hiding. Back in Los Angeles, Ethan fulfilled his promise. He added her name to the gallery. He gave her a series of photographs no one had ever seen before, portraits of her mother, young and smiling, before the bitterness, before the lies. And Avery knew what to do with them. The showcase would feature her collection. The final dress she would wear down the red carpet was nearly ready, but it was not just about fashion anymore. The train of the dress was long, elegant, and embroidered in delicate, defiant threadwork were the names of every person who ever tried to hide her. Margaret, Clara, the cousins, the teachers, the ones who laughed when she was sent to the back, her mother. And as the cameras flashed, Avery turned, looked directly into the lens, and said loud enough for the reporters to hear, "These are the names of the people who told me I was not worthy, but look at me now." And just like that, the girl from the back row was front and center, not in spite of them, because of them. As the cameras continued to flash, Avery's defiance echoed through the air, and her journey from the shadows to the spotlight became an undeniable testament to her strength. It wasn't just about reclaiming her worth, but about standing tall in the face of every injustice life threw her way. If you enjoyed Avery's story of transformation, resilience, and redemption, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us for more powerful stories. Share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that no matter how dark the past, the future can always be rewritten.